All right, class, let's get started. Today's lesson is going to be your camera function basic. Your basic camera functions. This is your intro to using the camera. Our objectives today are display proper operation of the camera, identify the basic camera functions, and safely handle and store the camera. Not too tough. Your final objective will be to pass the test, the camera function test. Now, you need to pass this test if you want to use the cameras for any type of production. There are advanced tests, but to just get your hands on these cameras, you need to pass the test to show that you can properly handle them and properly use the camera. All right? So for your bell work today, I had you guys look up your dream cameras. So I know I have my dream camera, but it changes kind of on a weekly basis. Right now I'm looking at, and besides these $80,000 cameras, my dream camera would be the Blackmagic camera. I think it runs about $2 to $3 grand. I might get the 4K if I have the money for it, but I don't right now. That's my dream camera. So I kind of want to talk about what you guys knew about cameras and what your dream cameras are. So anybody want to start us off? Aubrey does. Thank you, Aubrey.
Well, normally I shoot with a Nikon, but for film, I don't know, probably prefer a Canon.
Okay.
I picked up the Canon EOS 5D Mark III.
Ah,
Yeah.
very nice camera. Very nice camera. Now, what's great, I've actually filmed with that camera on a couple occasions. It's a very popular film camera. What's so great about that camera is it's got a full frame sensor. And you really notice the difference in your film quality with that sensor alone. So extremely good camera. It runs about, what, $3 grand for the base? What's it saying on there? Yeah, and then you got lenses you got to get with it. So, you know, you can anticipate about $10,000 investment for that camera, for one of those cameras. But well worth it. Extremely good camera. Anybody else? Dina, what were you talking about? What did you want for your camera? Exactly. I think that would be a Nikon DSLR to start out with it. A lot of features, photography and video, pretty decent video with that. And you can get those cameras in the kits probably under $1,000. So it's a good starter camera, definitely. Nathan, what do you have? I know you were eager about telling me what kind of camera you had.
The Sony Alpha 7.
The Sony Alpha 7 Mark II. I don't know if I'm familiar with that one.
I'm a Pentax shooter.
Okay.
They don't have a full frame setup right now.
Okay.
But the Sony it's a mirrorless setup.
Oh, okay.
Makes
Okay.
it a lot more compact.
Yes. Yeah.
But the downside is the battery draw is a little more. It requires more because the viewfinder, it's no longer a mirror. They actually have to project an image for you to look at.
Okay.
So that draws battery power.
And what's that one called again?
The Sony Alpha 7 Mark II.
Sony Alpha. What's it retail for?
About $2,500 tops.
Oh, that's not too bad. Okay. That's pretty much in that kind of prosumer. I mean, we get cameras that are going up to 50, 80 grand in the professional. And full frame, to me, that's huge. Once you go full frame, you don't go back. Or you don't want to anyway. Okay, good stuff. So we got kind of varied information about cameras. Looks like you guys kind of know what's going on. Sounds good. Okay. I kind of mentioned my dream camera. It changes all the time. I was looking at those, the Canon Cinema, the 100, 300, 500, really nice looking cameras, really into Canons. And then I talked to a few of my buddies that use the camera and they said, yeah, not so great. There's a little bit of downside. Looks like you might have to wait a couple generations before that camera is a good camera, but I mean, it's going to be a good camera regardless. But I think I'm looking at the Blackmagic. So, okay, cool stuff. Well, let's get in a little more to the meat of this lesson. Right now, we are in our kind of at the end of the transition into the digital realm of cameras. Typically when we talk about film production or movies, it was traditionally film stock. And to this day, they still use film stock in movies, but more and more it's transitioning over to digital. The digital cameras are just, they're getting better and better with their imagery. They're so easy to, much easier to use, much easier to handle the media, your videos. You don't have to actually expose film and get it developed, and you eliminate that cost. You capture footage and immediately throw it into your computer. There's no real capturing or anything. It's instant almost. And we're getting to the point where now imagery is going over Wi-Fi signals. So now you can film and it shoots it directly to your computer as you're done filming. And that stuff is just going to keep more and more and more and more going. For our class, we are using a digital camera. It's what's considered the very, very low-end professional label of a camera, the Canon camera. It's a Canon XA10. And you'll have handouts, information about the XA10. So we're going to go over some basic camera functions and usage, and then we're going to get into how to apply those functions directly to the cameras that we're using. Okay? So the camera operations that you guys are going to be tested on are sort of the basic camera operations of starting it up, choosing which format, what mode that the camera is going to be in, and how to push the record button, or where the record button is really. And then we'll start discussing a little more of the functions of the camera, and we're going to be looking at the focus, the white balance, and the exposure. And later on we'll talk about audio and XLRs once we get that equipment. But for now, we'll just kind of those big three ones. I feel like those are your nice basic ones, and we'll move up from there. And then you guys will work in groups, practicing everything you learned. And then when you're ready and you feel confident, we're going to individually, you guys will take a hands-on test of the camera to get signed off on the camera usage, and you'll be able to use it. Any questions? All right, let's get going. Let's get right into talking about the actual camera functions. First off is the focus. Now, everybody knows what focus is, right? It's the focus on the camera. I was going to have you guys define it, but I think everybody already knows what focus is. Now, typically a camera will default on automatic focus. And these cameras nowadays, these digital cameras nowadays, have amazing autofocus. It's called instant autofocus, and does a great job focusing. The problem is, and I'm sure you guys have seen that, if you keep it on autofocus and you're filming a subject and maybe somebody walks in front or they walk out of frame, that camera is searching for the focus, and it kind of does that in and out and bounces around and does that focus. Well, that's what we want to make sure we eliminate. As professional videographers, we don't depend on the autofocus. We're professional, so we switch it to manual. And for the most part, you're going to be using manual focus so that you are in control of your focus. But can anybody think of a situation where you would want to use autofocus? Filming yourself, right? So there's nobody to focus. So you're filming yourself, and if you're moving around. And if you're in one spot, maybe you could throw it on manual and you don't have to worry about it. But if you're moving around and stuff and you're filming yourself, you probably need autofocus, taking the risk that it might go in and out, but what else can you do, right? Any other situations where autofocus might be your only option? Maybe like if you're filming what we call a run and gun, where you're out maybe filming a documentary, and you don't really have a lot of time to set up the focus and everything. You got to get that shot right away, so you're really relying on your instant autofocus to work for you and get that shot before you have the time to set up and make sure everything's right, nice and pretty. But for the most part, beyond maybe a couple little situations, you're going to want to use your manual focus just to be in more control of your camera. Any questions on that? Don't imagine that. Now, getting into white balance. This is something that maybe not everybody knows. What is white balance? What is white balance? I asked.
White balance is like the camera settings that adjust for the kind of lighting you have, like daylight or nighttime or shade. It's like a camera setting that tries to
Yeah, basically, yeah. Maybe a little overcomplicated, but yeah, that's what it is. So yes, Nathan, what is white balance?
In photography and image processing, color balance is the global adjustment of intensities of colors. An important goal of this adjustment is to render specific colors, particularly neutral colors.
Right. It adjusts your colors. It makes sure that the white is white, and the red's red, and the blues are blue, and all that kind of stuff. Now, what happens is we depend on light. When we're filming something, we depend on light to come down, bounce off the object, and show us the color. The object absorbs some of the colors and reflects the rest of the colors, and that's the color we see. Now, we have different light sources that generate different light. Outside light is typically blue, inside light is typically red. To make sure that your video doesn't come out with a blue haze or a red haze, that your colors actually look, you need to balance the colors in your camera. Your eye does this automatically. Through your brain and your eye, when it reads stuff, it adjusts things like, oh, that's that and this is it. Your camera does it too, but it needs a little help. Now, your white balance, again, there's an automatic function on your white balance, and it is very effective. It does a great job of determining the colors and balancing your colors. Now, what would be the downside to using the white balance? Very similar to the focus, using the automatic focus. What would be the downside to using the automatic white balance?
Measures light wrong.
Well, it could, it's not necessarily, it does a good job at measuring the light, but think of it this way, it's constantly trying to adjust for the best balance, the best color balance. So what happens if your composition just changes a little bit as you're filming? All of a sudden your white balance is adjusting as the filming goes on. And if it continues to do that, you almost get that sort of vibrating effect that you see in the focus going in and out. Your white balance is adjusting and almost giving kind of it's just a weird little, almost a strobe effect going on in your film. So maybe your white balance is, as your composition changed and the colors changed a little bit, your white balance might go a little bit off, but at least it's consistent. If it keeps adjusting within that shot, it's going to look weird. And it's kind of finding, okay, is this the white balance? Is this the right white balance? Is this the right white balance? The automatic, like I said, is very good at finding the correct white balance. But you're at risk losing control when you use automatic settings. So as filmmakers, we want to be in control of everything. So we're going to go to the manual setting of the white balance. Now, again, there are certain situations, a couple I can think of, where you would want to use the automatic settings. Can anybody think of those situations?
One room is kind of darker, and then you're going outside, it's lighter. It wouldn't automatically.
That's the main one that I'm thinking of, because when we go indoor to outdoor, we have different color composition, and we'll need to adjust it. But if you're filming a shot where it goes from inside to outside, usually you don't have time or even the availability to go in there and change your white balance as the shot changes. It's just nearly impossible, you know? So what you can do is throw it on automatic, and as you're following the person outside, the white balance will adjust once it comes outside. And then at least you have a pretty decent composition, unless you want to fix it in post. But that would probably be one of the only reasons I would use automatic, unless you're using the manual settings and you just can't get a good white balance for whatever reason. It's just not working. Maybe throw it on automatic so that you can, oh, okay, this works, and just hope that it doesn't fluctuate in and out. But I would recommend always using the manual white balance. And there's 3 different types of options when we get into our camera, and we'll discuss that once we actually open up the camera. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is your exposure. Now, this can get a little complicated, but what is exposure to you guys? When you hear about a camera exposure, what is exposure?
It's like the amount of light that's hitting the film or the sensor.
That's essentially what it is, the amount of light coming through the camera. Now, when we get into digital cameras, it's a little bit different than our traditional film cameras. Now, in a traditional film camera, you have your iris or your f-stop. It's the actual little ring that opens and closes that allows light, different amounts of light in. Then you got your shutter. The shutter is the actual thing that opens up exposes the film, and then closes up again. And depending on what you're shooting or what kind of film you have, the shutter will open for 1/5 of a second or 1/1000th of a second, depending on your camera. It ranges in time. And then we have things like, when we start talking about digital cam, we have things like your gain and your ISO, and it's all very, very, very confusing. But we'll try to simplify it for you right now. Our camera is going to deal with an exposure. It does have gain and it has all that stuff, but really when you get down to what you can actually control, you just control, essentially it's your f-stop. It's the brightness or the darkness of your image. And the camera does several different little things to adjust that, and we'll get into that. But let's talk a little bit. We kind of understand what your iris is. It's what lets it in. And the shutter speed does help, but let's talk real briefly about ISOs and gain. Who knows what an ISO is when we're talking about digital cameras? That might be something you guys want to look up because I couldn't even define it. Somebody look up ISO. I'll wait. Cue elevator music. That's what we're going to find out. That's what we're going to find out. Yeah, I know, and this is kind of the idea, is that, hey, if you want to know something, guess what? Boom, ask Google. International Organization for Standardization is what ISO is. That tells you nothing, right? What is it, though? What really is the ISO? Anybody got a definition yet, or are you just more confused? Yes, it has to do with sensitivity of light. It's really your capture chip, your color chip, your capture chip, your image chip, ability to absorb light, if you want to look at it that way.
Like films, like regular old 35mm, like film speed.
Yes, kind of, yes. Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of the same, yeah. Now, without completely breaking down and understanding ISO, what you need to look at in a camera's ISO and why you need an ISO and why it's important. A higher ISO allows you to record high quality video in low light. That's basically what it's used for, among all the stuff. So if you have a really high ISO and a quality camera, that camera has a high sensitivity on their chip's ability to absorb the light, and it's able to record high quality stuff in low light. So higher ISO, the better of a low light camera it is. Now, there's all kinds of reasons that you want to film in low light, but none of them are good, because you should always properly light your set or your shoot or whatever. But sometimes maybe you're doing some documentary film and you just don't have it. Along with the ISO is gain. Now look up gain and tell me what gain is, and see if you can distinguish the two. In film, in a digital video camera, gain. And yeah, and you're finding stuff like ISO and camera gain, they're kind of one and the same in a lot. A lot of times they are. A lot of times cameras will have ISO and not gain. Sometimes they'll have gain and not ISO. Sometimes they'll have both. Sometimes they'll have neither, even though it does have a chip, it has no way to control any of that. Now the gain is something very similar. Now the gain essentially it's the electronic boost of your signal, of your digital signal, in layman's terms, essentially, without a proper definition. What it's going to do is, again, in like low light situations, if you have a low light, you can boost your gain, you can bring up your gain, and it's going to brighten your image, and you're going to be able to see more stuff. The problem is the more you bring up the gain, the lower quality your image goes. You start getting a grainy look. You start getting weird little spots and weird little things that the camera's picking up, because it's essentially making itself more sensitive to light, so you're just picking up all the weird little things. And so your image quality goes down as your gain goes up. So you really want to keep the gain as low as possible when filming. But again, if you're filming and it's just too dark, it's better to boost up your gain a little bit and actually get an image than no image at all. Kind of a bad grainy image is better than nothing. So that's kind of how we use the gain and stuff. A lot of times, almost all the times, gain is somewhat of an automatic function. And if you do have control over your gain, most of the time you can only choose like low, medium, or high gain. You have like, 3 settings or something on it. Most cameras, it's just an automatic function that sort of adjusts for your camera. The solution, if you have an automatic gain that you can't control, the solution is make sure you light your shoot well. As always, that's the solution to a lot of problems with the camera, is make sure your shot is well lit. Okay? Any questions on that stuff? Those are the 3 things. I want to make sure you understand at least the sort of what they are and how they work and stuff like that. Any questions on that? Everybody kind of feel pretty confident about that? Good, because you're going to be tested on it. All right, so let's get into the camera. All right, here's our camera case. Now, what I want you to see is when I open this up, come on, this is how the camera is packed in. This is how it should always look. This is how it should look when you get it, and this is how it should look after you're done using the camera. Just to go over real quick, there's your actual camera. Here is the top handle with your XLR inputs. Here's basically all the cords that you need to plug in. Your component, your HDMI, USB, to hook up the camera directly to the computer. Here's your little microphone stand. A lot of times we're not using that because we don't have the microphones for it. And up here is your wireless lavs. And the lav mics and all that stuff are packed right in there too. And here's a Blackmagic video converter, which we don't use. But it's there anyway. So we talk about proper handling of these cameras. Now, these cameras are very compact and lightweight. So you don't have to really worry about a big bulky camera that you might drop and handling it. We want to handle these properly, but we don't really have to worry about weight. So when we pull out the camera, I always pull it out from the handle. And that's how I hold it, right there from the bottom, making sure that I don't drop anything. If you're going to use the handle with the XLR inputs, now the camera can function without this handle. But if you're using any kind of professional audio with XLR inputs and want to adjust it, or you just want to use this as a handle, which is what I love doing, go ahead and put it on. Now it's real simple. You slide in the shoe in the front part, and on the back, you have to make sure that you lift up these screws, and then it slides in. The screws get pushed back down and screwed in. And they have little grooves for a screwdriver, but really you're fine if you just kind of do it, finger tight, I guess, hand tight. And then in the front part with the shoe, you want to screw that down just to make sure it's nice and secure. Now, this is how I hold the camera. And that's, even if I'm not using the XLR inputs, I still attach this because this is how I like to hold and film stuff. Now, we have this way, the traditional handheld camera. Now that's a proper way of holding it, but I hope I never see any of you guys actually holding the camera like this, because you will get crappy video if you hold it like this. Use a tripod, use an image, or a stabilizer, or use whatever you got, or hold the camera like this. If you feel comfortable like this, go right ahead. I'm not going to fail you for holding the camera like that, but you'll find out that you'll get better quality footage holding it other ways. Okay. Any questions so far? Not too bad, pretty basic. Okay. Now, what I want to do is go over real quick the basic functions of this. Austin, you're probably not going to be able to really zoom in, but we can try. Go ahead and try. Now, we're assuming you guys can see this. The first task is to turn this thing on. How do we turn this on? Well, Canon sure likes to keep changing the way they turn stuff on. And in this camera, there's a little power button right there on the back left-hand side of the camera. And all you got to do is push it. And the camera turns on, just like that. Beautiful, right? Now, okay, to change the mode of the camera is on the other side of the camera, the right back side, and you got 3 different modes. You got the auto, which we will never use, you got your manual, and your cinema. Now for what we're using the camera for most of the time, there's not too much difference between manual and cinema mode. I would recommend just put it in manual, but if you want to shoot it in cinema, you can go ahead and shoot it in cinema. Maybe if you feel like you're doing more of a cinematic film, sure, why don't we do cinema? But from what I found using these cameras, that the cinema mode is very similar to the manual. It just gives you different options as far as like preset styles, like a sepia tone or a or something like that. These are all things that we do in post-production, so we're not going to rely on the camera to do that type of effects for us, because we want more control over everything. So go ahead and put in manual, but if it's in cinema, that's okay. And it's simply just a little switch. Got it? That's auto. That's manual. That's cinema. And you just make sure that you have it in the one that you want. All right. So now let's go to the TV screen and we'll show you how to set up the recording type, the video quality. Now we can, I'll show you a couple more basic stuff and then we'll get into the more advanced features. So first thing we want to do is you want to be able to control the type of filming that you're doing. Your quality, do you want it high quality, low quality, mid-range and stuff. So what you do to adjust that is you hit function and then you go to menu, and under the little film icon you scroll up and it says there recording mode. So we're changing the mode, the recording mode. And right now I have it on a high quality 24 megabytes per second. And we have different qualities that we can do. High quality 17, high quality 12, 7, and 5. Now, I would recommend, unless you are filming something and you need 23 hours to film it right there, I would recommend staying in the FXP or the MXP mode. And if you're filming for quality, go ahead and push it up to the highest quality. The MXP and the FXP are the only two that shoot a true 1080p, a 1920 by 1080. The other XP Plus, SP, and LP will shoot a 1440 by 1080. Still an HD format, but it's that 1080i, that HVD format. Not bad, but why not choose the high quality? The only reason that you wouldn't want to shoot high quality, I would assume, would be for time. Like if you need to record more than 5 hours of film, you would need to. So that's how you do that. You can return. And the other thing that I really need to show you for basic is, where is this stuff being recorded? Now this camera has an internal memory. It has a 64 gigabyte internal memory, which is a pretty big size internal memory. You saw on the screen at the high end level, you got almost 6 hours of recording time internally on their highest setting. That's really good, actually. But you have the option of putting SD cards. You can actually have 2 SD cards in there. So if you want to switch it from internal recording, which is what it is right now, to camera A or slot A or slot B. I'll choose A right now. I don't have a camera or a card in there, so it's going to scream at me after I choose it saying, no memory card, buddy. We can't record there. Thank you, very smart camera, for letting me know that. So we'll switch it back to the internal.
Could you record something on like the internal one and then transfer it over to your SD card, put an SD card in later, and then...
Great question. Beautiful question. I'm not 100% sure. No, it would be great. It would be great to do that, and I would have to look into that a little bit more. But because we have that issue where we record internally, and to get it onto the computer, it's not that big of a deal, but you have to plug it in through a USB. Yeah. If you could just transfer it right onto your card, which I'm kind of thinking maybe you could do that, that would be good. But good question. We'll have to look into it. Love it. That'll be something that oh, and the frame rate. The frame rate was the last thing I wanted to show you, actually. So if we push it to the frame rate and select it, here's our different frame rates. We have 60i, and then progressive frame 30, progressive frame 24, and then a 24 sort of film thing. Now, this is kind of up to your preference. Now, 60i, it's the difference between interlaced and progressive. I can't really tell you what's better or not. I like filming in progressive frames just because I like editing that way. To me, from what I can think, there's really no advantage or disadvantage to the two. It's kind of what you want. And then they do have the 24 frames. 24 frames are your film standard. It's what cinema film cameras film in, 24 frames a second. That's pretty much your Hollywood standard. So these cameras mimic that. So if you want to do something that's kind of a cinematic Hollywood film, maybe you throw the camera in cinema mode and you push it to 24 frames. This 24 frames, sorry. This is a SD frame. So I got it at progressive frames 24. Cool. So I have the highest quality, recording to internal, and I have a frame rate of 24 frames per second. And those are the basics of the camera. Any questions on the basics? I figured the basics would be pretty straightforward. Now let's get into the what you guys are going to be working on. So focus, now that we have use of it. So focus. Now, there we go. There we got the focus going. Hey, everybody. There's class. Now, focus is pretty simple. There is a way to go into the functions and get the focus, but the easiest way is right here on the camera. Well, I'll have to get a view of that. It's right here on the camera, and you switch it from autofocus to manual focus. You can see right on your screen, autofocus, manual focus. So when I'm in manual focus, I use my focus ring, and now we're out of focus, and we're in focus. Now, since Aubrey's by far the prettiest one in the front row, between Robert and Nathan. This camera actually does, now you're on scene, this again, I know, you wore the pretty hat today. This camera actually does a pretty good depth of field that I wanted to show you real quick. So you zoom in. Am I going the right way? Come on, focus. You could be a professional camera operator at this point. Here we go, we're getting you into focus now. There we focus, and if you can kind of tell, the background is pretty close to you, so it's not as good. But you have a depth of field here where your subject is in focus, but everything around him in the background, if you kind of look at the phone back there, is out of focus. That's your depth of field. Typically, a lot of these digital video cameras don't have a depth of field like that, and that's why the DSLRs became so popular in film, because they could have a really shallow depth of field, and you get that cinematic look. So you can see this camera actually does a pretty good job at cinematic look. If you zoom in a little bit and focus in, you get a nice shallow depth of field. We'll zoom out. There we go. Now we can see everybody. So your focus, to me, it's pretty straightforward. I don't see anybody having problems with focus. It's switching it from manual to auto and back to manual, and then just using the focus ring. Any questions on focus? I think we're all pretty good with focus. Now let's get into white balance, different types of white balance. And we'll be able to display this on this camera. Couple different ways to go to white balance. You can go through the menu, but if you just hit function, you'll see right here that you have a white balance option right there. So I could go into the menu and follow and try to find it deep in the menu, but I could just click it right here and go to my white balance. Right now I have my white balance set at a specific color temperature. You have three different options. You have, if you scroll up, you have all of these presets. Well, we have the automatic. We're not going to count the automatic. This is the default automatic. And I'll switch to automatic, and you can see it fixes the white balance and does a really good job. Again, automatic is a great setting. It's just if your composition of the lighting changes a little bit, the camera's going to adjust to it, and you get that weird kind of flicker strobe thing going on. That's really not what we want. So besides the automatic, we have daylight, shade, and cloudy. These are our outdoor ones right here. And they're pretty straightforward. If you're in full daylight, you select daylight. If you're in shade, you select shade. If it's cloudy out, you select cloudy, right? Nothing too complicated. Let's remember, video people aren't always the most, well, let's not put them down too much because I'm a video guy. We're not always the brightest guys. We're not always the sharpest. Ah, yes. Well, let's find out. So there's our outside one. We can select shade, and this should make it look red because outside it's a bluish light, so it's trying to compensate for the blue. We're seeing it red now because we're not outside. So we get our color balance is off. And you can see directly that it is. Then we got our indoors. Our fluorescent H, a tungsten, and color temperature. Now, the fluorescent is your typical fluorescent lights. And we're under fluorescent right now, so if we choose fluorescent, we get pretty close to where we're at. Not totally, but pretty close. Your fluorescent H, you can see the difference. The fluorescent H is more designed for fluorescent lights that are like color temperature, more not your higher end fluorescent lights, your high output fluorescent, your more color coded fluorescent lights, because there's plenty of fluorescents out there that aren't just the regular kind of green fluorescents. Typically a regular fluorescent bulb that we always, the big long bulbs, give off somewhat of a green light. So you never want to film under those fluorescent because it just makes everything look gross. It's terrible. They do have compact fluorescents that are studio lights that are color rated, that have a specific color, and they work pretty well. I have some at home, and that's what I use. They're fluorescents, and they bring out a 5600K light. It's perfect. But that's the fluorescent H. I think is more designed for studio lights and stuff like that, because you can see when we put it under fluorescent H, it's very similar to our daylight setting. Come on. Or at least our shade setting. These two are almost the same. You can see that. So the fluorescent H is designed for the fluorescents that are kind of color temperature toward daylight. And then we have our tungsten. Tungsten is your typical indoor light. So we're pretty close in tungsten. I think that's probably our best bet when we're doing a preset in this room is the tungsten light. So your first options are these presets, and within the presets we have the outdoor and the indoor. And then your next option is your color temperature, which you'll see K, which represents the temperature given to a light. Now, your light temperatures will range from about, 2,500 to about 7,500, let's say. A little bit more or less than that. Now, you can use your color temperature setting for your white balance if you're in like a studio and all your lights are set to a certain color temperature, like the studio we have. We have LED lights and they're all rated to 5600K. So knowing that all the light I have in that studio is of that color source, I can set my color temperature to 5600K and I should get a perfect color balance. And maybe my lights are 75 or whatever. I can keep adjusting. See, in this room, the higher I go, the more red we're getting, because we're indoors. But if I go down, you can see we're going to start getting a little better. Now we're in blue. So you can see in this room, we want to be right around, almost looks like around 3,500 or so. That looks about right. So in the color temperature, you can see how you have total control over your white balance. And maybe that's the way you guys want to go if you want to kind of go, okay, I want to have exact control. I know where this is, and I'm going to set this color temperature to that. You have that option. And your final option is a custom white balance. So when I select the custom white balance, let me go back and explain kind of how this works. Your custom white balance, you have two settings, and what you're going to do is you're going to allow the camera to adjust for the white balance, and then it locks in. And the way we do that is you have your scene lit the way that you should have it lit. all the lights on, and then you focus in on something white or a white piece of paper, and then you select the white balance. So if you want to hold up this paper right here for me. Our lighting's pretty bad, but I'm going to zoom into that paper slowly. It's the setting on the zoom. And did I have my focus on manual? There we go. And then what I do is once I have that pretty much in there, I select my one and I click set white balance, and it adjusts. And then if it can't get a good white balance, that little icon will keep blinking. Once it's done, the icon stops blinking. And there's my set one. So your set one and your set two, your custom white balance, it's a lot like an automatic white balance that you lock in. To me, this is the best way to get your white balance. It might take a little bit more effort, take a little bit of time, but you're going to get the best results out of doing your custom white balance. The only time you might not want to do custom white balance again is if your composition changes and stuff. And then depending on what you're filming, if you're filming in a studio, well, your compositions change, your scene changes, your set changes, you change your white balance with it. No problem, right? Any questions on that? We'll zoom out. No? I'm looking through the camera and I don't see anybody asking questions. All right. Now, the fun part, your exposure. And you can see on our display, it's telling us right there that we have white balance preset 1 on this. And something else that's kind of cool on this camera and the functions, whatever thing that you did, that you just previously did, it'll give you the option to go right back. So we just worked with our white balance and say, oh, well, I forgot to do something. I can click on that little corner and it takes me right back to the white balance screen. And just to kind of show you that I'm not lying, if I go to function and I go to, we're going to go to exposure, any of these. Let's say I go to mic levels. I'm like, okay, that's good. That's what I want. You all know how I was going crazy about not seeing the levels. That's how you turn your levels off and on. So I exit and then look at there. There's your little mic icon. So that was the last thing I went to. I click on it, it brings me right back. Kind of a cool little feature of the camera. A little extra info there for you guys. So now let's get into exposure. Same way that we were going into, we go to function and we could go to menu and dive into the menu and look for the exposure, or we can just say, hey, look, exposure's right there. And it has a little A telling me it's automatic exposure right now. Now, again, with your exposure, you can set it into the automatic settings, but we have that same issue. The camera is going to be constantly trying to adjust for the best exposure. And so you get really great exposure with the automatic settings, but if you go to manual, then you essentially lock in your exposure and you don't have to worry about it fluctuating up and down. Now, we talked a lot about ISOs and gain and shutters and all that kind of stuff. Well, you really don't get a lot of control in this camera besides the actual exposure. Now, if you look on it, and it's a lot like your f-stop, I clicked on manual to turn it on to manual, and I get the little red line, and then I get these arrows back and forth, and I can slide it, or I can hit the arrows, and you can see if I bring it down, the image gets darker. If I push it up, we're getting overexposed, and the image gets brighter. So a lot of this has to do with sort of, you want good composition, you want good exposure, but maybe you want it to stylize your film a little bit. Maybe you do want to film it a little darker, a little brighter, get a little washed out, or deeper colors. You have that control of how you want your exposure. Most of the time you keep it at that 0 and you're going to be good, nice stuff, but maybe you want to change it up a little bit. Any questions on the exposure? Now, there's a little more into that. You can actually click on this and it will set the exposure based on the little spots that you click on, which is fun. Nothing really changing there. You can look at a waveform monitor. So on this, if I want to use the waveform, our waveforms are kind of crazy looking right now. But if you want to use your waveform, you basically want, oh, you're not seeing that on the screen, are you? Oh, that's too bad. It's on the camera. Never mind. That's weird that it wouldn't show that. Okay. And then your zebra patterns. Now, zebra patterns are a visual representation on your camera. You can only see it on this, so we'll cut that out. We're not going to talk about it. It's not here. But just so you guys know, a zebra pattern is a visual representation on your monitor that shows you when things are getting overexposed. And it gives little kind of moving lines to say, hey, this is washed out. It's not that bad unless it's like on your subject face. Like if you're filming somebody and they got zebra lines all over the face, that means, hey, their face is overexposed and you're probably not going to get a lot of quality out of that image. So you got to bring down your exposure. You got to lower your exposure so it doesn't. It's not showing on this monitor, so I'm not going to show on. That's about it. Any questions on exposure? Let's go wash this out. There we go. That's the kind of film I want to shoot. There we go. Everybody looks like ghosts. Good stuff. And then if you're like, oh, I don't want any of this, just switch it off and it goes back to auto exposure. There you go. Okay. No more questions? Everybody feeling pretty good about the cameras? All right, let's break up into groups and we'll go through your worksheets. Would put it at 33.
Yeah.
It tells you what it does. So we had it at what, 48, and it was pretty good. That your custom put it down to 33. So
A little blue, but yeah. Okay.
and that's what you do. I mean, there's these different ways, and honestly, what I do is I kind of try all three and see what the best one I get, the best quality I get. You know, a lot of times I'll try to do the presets at first just because they're quick and easy. And if I get a good enough quality on the presets, I'll just stick with the presets.
Right.
But if it's just not coming together and I'm not getting the colors I want, I'll set the custom balance.
Okay.
And then again, of course we want to do the best we can in the camera, but we can always adjust colors in post-production.
All right, what's next?
Hot.
Next one is the aperture.
Oh yeah, we're like done with this camera.
And was that the device or the instrument, the aperture? Was that like an actual?
It technically, I don't think it's a physical thing.
Okay.
I think I don't think it's an actual thing moving. I think it's an adjustment that goes on
Gotcha. Okay. So it's not
internally.
like
I think I'll have to look at, like the shutter's not an actual shutter. The
Right.
shutter is internally when, telling the camera basically when to cut the first frame and go to the second frame,
Okay.
kind of thing. And yeah, there's not an actual shutter, so it's all electronic
Gotcha.
stuff. And I don't know if there's a shutter speed. It was weird in the manual. It said there was a shutter speed, but I didn't see one when I was adjusting it. So I think I need to spend a little more time with the camera.
What about gain?
And on that stuff, let's just pretend because I could get exposure. Did you find how to adjust the exposure? Go to function, and then you have exposure right there. And it's weird. I guess you can touch the screen and adjust the exposure based on those little things. But once you have it on manual, you can push it up and down. And it gets brighter. The shutter is weird that there's not a shutter option. I would be shocked if there's not a shutter option, because that's kind of a big deal when you're filming. Is your shutter speed? Kind of a
Cool.
All right, that's good. You're done.
Alright.
Done torturing you guys. So go ahead and take the camera out.
Alright. This cute little guy. First thing is putting on the handle. Goes this way. Oh, these guys always get in the way.
Yeah, that part is probably the trickiest of everything you're gonna do is getting that handle on.
There we go. Screw it on. Tighten that.
Very good, very
Okay.
good.
Spin the screen, power it on.
Power it on.
Okay. Now, what was the first thing?
Now,
Two?
let's change the filming format.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is I want you, oh no, first let's make sure you're in manual mode. It's not on the menu, it's on the camera. We'll edit that out on the other side.
Oh, right there.
There it is.
Yeah. Switch. It's already on manual.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
So you're in manual mode. Let's switch it to cinema then if it's on
Okay.
manual. Why not?
Cinema mode.
There we go. Now what I want you to do is make sure that it's in the MXP mode. Or
Okay.
let's see what recording quality, what recording mode or recording quality you're in.
Wait, where's this thing? Ooh.
Mhm.
Oh, it's touch screen.
Yeah, it's a little tricky.
Go down.
Maybe not in that menu.
Oh yeah, now I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah. Okay. Recording mode. It's on MXP right now.
All right, so let's switch it to FXP.
MXP.
Why not?
Okay.
Good
Wow.
job. Okay. Now, I want you to set it to autofocus.
Mm. Focus.
Yeah, you're not quite.
No.
You're making it a little harder than you need to. Focus.
Functions, right?
Switching it from auto to manual is not necessarily in the menu. It's one of your buttons on the camera. Aubrey fails.
I know.
It's right here. You're gonna kill yourself.
Oh my gosh.
It's right
The
there.
heck?
It was too easy.
It's dumb.
So that's you
Okay.
switch it to auto and manual. So let's go ahead and switch it back to manual and use the focus ring to focus in on maybe this little part of the case right
Okay.
there.
Oh, that zoomed in.
Yeah, it does a focus assist. It's a little bit shocking at first,
Yeah.
but once you're used to it, it really does help you out
Okay.
because you need to zoom in to focus most of the time. Perfect.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Now let's set the white balance. So go ahead and get into the white balance, and I want you to set it to, let's do a 6500K.
Okay. Okay. Wait. Set. No. Go back. Color temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And 6500 is going to be down here. Probably could have just scrolled. Oops. Okay. That's 6500.
Perfect. Oh no, that's the
really
wrong
red.
white balance. Let's
Wait.
go ahead and switch it to a custom white balance.
Okay. Alright. Set. Oh, there we go. Still getting it. Okay, I think you got it.
Yeah, once it's-
3100K.
There you go. I like how it does that where the custom white balance actually shows you the
Yeah.
temperature. Looks
cool.
All right, now let's just go into your exposure.
Okay.
And I want you to overexpose this shot.
Overexposed. Oh, there we go.
That is
Three.
overexposed.
Right.
Good job.
Cool. Okay, should I set it back?
You can just click on the manual again and it'll go back to auto. Click on the M. There you go. That's a good way of doing it. Now, that's it. Let's shut the camera down and put it back in its case.
Off. Put the little stylus back on
Are you left-handed?
there. No.
No. Okay.
Why?
You pretty much become left-handed to use that, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because, yeah, we try to use it right-handed. Yeah, it doesn't
I
really
know,
work.
it's weird. But,
Yeah.
alright. Yeah, this is awkward.
A little
There
bit.
we go.
It is. A lot of it's just because of the compact design of it. They got this thing so small and
Yeah.
now it's so hard to manipulate, so.
Alright. Put that back in there. Cover back on it. I believe it was facing this way. Cool.
Perfect. Great job.
Good.
Yes! Good job,
Yay.
thank you.